So for the last couple of days, for the last week, the Israelis have been doing something that they excel at, which is firing at United Nations peacekeepers, right? And I'm talking specifically about UNIFIL. So UNIFIL is the mission that sits right between Lebanon and occupied Palestine, okay? And it's the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. And, you know, it's... People think that it just sprung out of nowhere. And I was so bemused by these headlines that you see in the Washington Post and in CNN saying, what is UNIFIL? Imagine how dumb your viewership have to be for you to even publish that headline. They don't really sound like the most informed people about the Middle East, do they? But in any case, it's been there, okay, for, I mean, it goes back at least 40 years. My parents were serving in UNIFIL, both of them, right? You see the blue helmet behind me? Yeah. So that one's been in Lebanon. And what the Israelis have been doing, and they've been doing this for a long time, and I'll go back in time in a second, is firing at the UN. And they've been doing this in such a calculated way, okay? So I'll go through them day by day, and I'll show you the perimeter map and everything, all right? But just again, sorry, I got sidetracked for a second. I was talking about why they set up the mission in the beginning. So it has a mandate since 2006, which is UN Security Council Resolution 1701. That one is specifically about the 2006 war, okay, July war. But before then, the whole point was to keep, you know, basically some kind of a buffer between Israel and Lebanon without defining an actual border, because neither side agrees on you know, a border between each other. You remember the maritime border issue. That's also related to this whole thing, is that Israel doesn't have diplomatic ties with Lebanon and vice versa, right? So they don't even recognize each other as countries, never mind agree on what, you know, where to slice the border in the sea nor on land. So with the Lebanese civil war, with Israel invading Lebanon in 1978, I mean, you've had a real reason to have UNIFIL in there, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the deadliest UN mission in terms of peacekeepers lost. What is the number exactly? 326 they've lost. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the deadliest UN mission anywhere. And in any case, let me show you on the screen with this week's attacks where they've been firing exactly on the perimeter, okay? So here you can see they've carved it up into several sectors, yes? Now, the first time that the Israelis fired at UNIFIL was October 6th of this year I'm talking about, right? Not in history, definitely not in history. But they released this statement on the UNIFIL website, okay? And what happened is that the Israelis were doing this in, so position 652. So if you look down here, okay, this is the Irish sector, okay? Now, no one from the Irish sector got hit. No one was injured. No one got hit, nothing. But still, all right? Again, I'll zoom out for you just so you can see that, where we are on the map. Over here, okay, bottom right corner. But that's the first point where the Israelis started firing, okay? And you know, the UN typically, of course, they don't really mention what's going on, blah blah blah. They just say we're concerned and all this and that. They use all this vague language. But then it starts getting much more precise as the days go by. So I'll fast forward from October 6th now to October 10th, okay? Now here they're saying this morning 2 peacekeepers were injured after an IDF Merkava tank fired its weapon toward an observation tower at UNIFIL's headquarters in Naqoura. So that's, again, we're going to go from the bottom right corner to the bottom left corner, all the way over here. That's where the UNIFIL headquarters are, okay? See where my mouse is? I don't know if you can see where it is, but it's over here, okay? So an Israeli tank fired at an observation tower. Now, if I'm not mistaken, just to get the nationalities in the right order, because I tweeted this and I'm just gonna refer back to my own tweet. So the first yeah, the first day it was 2 Indonesian soldiers, all right? So the first day, those 2 soldiers that they're talking about that fell out of the observation tower and went to hospital, they were Indonesian, okay? Then the Israelis fired on UN position 131 in Lebanon, which is hold on, 131 is down there, okay? So you see, it's not very far from Nahura, it's not very far from their headquarters. It's just right there, okay? And then they injured 2 Sri Lankan soldiers, okay? And you can see also from the statement that they struck the entrance to the bunker where peacekeepers were sheltering. They damaged vehicles, they damaged the communication system, and then an IDF drone was observed. Sorry, excuse me. An IDF drone was observed flying inside the UN position up to the bunker entrance. Do you know why? Do you think because the IDF give a crap about the peacekeepers? No. They want to make sure that they're hitting them. That's why. I mean, it's like it's so in your face, you know. It's such an Israeli thing to do. It's like we were gonna hit you, and we want you to know it was us. We want you to know it was us for good measure. Okay, so let's recap. An Israeli tank. I mean, you really have to be a lunatic. You really have to be a lunatic to behave like this. They fire with a tank. They fire. I'm sorry, it's just wild. They fired at the headquarters. It's not even like a random outpost. It's at the headquarters. Like, we want you to know. Okay? And they hit an observation tower as well. They injured 2 Indonesian soldiers. They hit another position, injured 2 Sri Lankan soldiers. So if you're counting, that's 4 injuries, okay? And then they hit a bunker entrance where they know that peacekeepers are sheltering inside the bunker. So, you know, hypothetically, if you hit the bunker entrance well enough, just so I'm not misunderstanding anything, just logically, if you are firing, you know, with live ammunition at a bunker entrance and you know that there are people inside the bunker, why would you do that? I mean, I'm guessing so you could entomb the people in the bunker? That would, you know, that strikes me as someone this loose and kind of unhinged would want to do. Right? Because you're firing at the UN at this point. So do you sound like someone who would want to entomb peacekeepers inside of a bunker? Yes, you do. Yes, frankly, you do. That sounds exactly like something you would want to do. So, again, they damaged vehicles and the communication system. What is that at this point, right? You're firing at the soldiers themselves. So, and then they fly a drone up, you know, to kind of like film everything, right? So in addition to that, they also fired at the position's perimeter monitoring cameras. So every post has its own cameras, especially today. Everything's become a lot cheaper since they originally set up UNIFIL. You know, they basically, again, think of the precision that you're using to fire at these cameras. You know, it's very, very vindictive and calculated, and you're trying to send a message. You're basically saying we don't want you here, and we don't want you to even breathe, and we don't want you to watch us, and we don't want anyone who's left alive after you to watch us either. We don't want any images beaming back. Does that sound like something that the Israelis would do based on the fact that they kill journalists? Yes, it does, because they decapitate journalists, they silence journalists, they love doing that, right? So that sounds like something. And after all, they're shooting at the perimeter cameras. It's very, very, very specific, right? Not one, all of them. Yeah. They also fired at, this is an even funnier one. I mean, if it can get funnier, they fired at UN position 132A. All right. So that's all the way over here, the bottom left corner, the far left corner. Okay. 132A. And why is it funny? It's funny because it's used. Okay, in the Ras Naqura, which is used as a tripartite meeting area. Okay, so basically, that was their kind of nail in the coffin of saying we're done cooperating with the Lebanese side and with the UN. So we're firing exactly at the place where we all meet, all 3 of us, just to kind of show you that we don't want to meet anymore. Right? I mean, that's the conclusion that one could draw from this behavior. If you need to draw one at all. I mean, it just sounds unhinged, right? But specifically, Why are they shooting at the soldiers, at the cameras, and at the tripartite meeting area? You know, I think these things have some meaning behind them. Would you agree with that assessment? In any case, going back, you know, this is, so now October 11th, okay? October 11th. That's when they hit the 2 Sri Lankan soldiers. And then here it just gets even funnier and funnier. They bring a caterpillar. Do you know what a caterpillar is? Okay, a caterpillar is not, it's not the bug. Look, I'll just look that up for you. IDF caterpillar. It's not a bulldozer, but it's you know, it's basically for clearing rubble. Okay, so I mean, they have different variants of it, but the D9 is the most typical one. Okay, they can also hammer things from the back, and in any case, you know, it's used most commonly for destroying roads and towing tanks out of Gaza. That's what it's used for. When I say destroying roads, you heard that correctly. The Israelis like to destroy roads after they raid the West Bank. Okay, so it's an armored bulldozer, to be more precise. But that's what it is. And just look at, going back to the statement, they brought one of these things up to a T-wall. Okay, T-wall is one of those concrete shaped T-shaped concrete walls. Okay, this is exactly what it is. So you'll see these outside a perimeter. If you've ever been to Berlin, you've seen the Berlin Wall. That's what it looks like. Okay, it's one of those things. Okay, it's freestanding. So they bring one of these armored bulldozers. This is on October 11th. The Israelis bring one of these beasts up to the T-walls on the UN base, and they start destroying it. And why? So that tanks can go in afterwards. I mean, you really can't make this up. Look, several T-walls at position 131 fell when an IDF Caterpillar hit the perimeter and IDF tanks moved in the proximity of the UN position. I mean, it's just like, it's like a movie, you know? You could make a movie out of this, you know? You really could. It's so insane. It's so wild. It's so wild, really. And my favorite part out of all of these, I guess is certainly this one, right, with the T-walls. I would have to say that the sight of that is just so ridiculous and outrageous. Now you have someone, I think this was from an Irish peacekeeper, who shared a photograph where you can see the Israeli tanks nearby. This is not from the, I don't believe this is from the same date, because the Irish are in a different sector, right? So, and they specifically said it was 131. Yeah, no, that was not an Irish. So I'm correct. It's not the Irish sector, but nevertheless, when the Irish were getting hit, one of them took a photograph. You can see in white, you've got the APCs and the regular Jeeps. Those are UN in white. And these are the Merkava tanks. So they basically just surrounded the base. Now, you know, there's only two conclusions I can draw from this. One, they're either just there to kind of harass the UN, which makes sense because, again, they've been doing this for a long time. Or they wanted to use them as, what's the term again? Something human shields? Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about Israeli, doesn't it? But no, I'm serious. I mean, the photograph is real. It's legitimate. Look, even the BBC posted it, which is astonishing, right? These are Israeli tanks. They have surrounded a UN base. Make of that what you will. The point is, they're definitely not allowed in the goddamn base. I can guarantee you that. So, in any case, here are some photos of the UN peacekeepers being treated for their wounds, for their injuries, after being hit by Israeli fire, by Israeli. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. Look at the hole. Look at the size of that thing. Jesus, it's a miracle they were just wounded. Honestly, it's a miracle. It really is. So in total, you have 5 peacekeepers. There's a 5th one. Don't know what nationality, and we just know that they were hit with a bullet. Now, based on the information that I've given you just from the last week, if you had to guess who shot that 5th peacekeeper, kind of narrows down the options, doesn't it? My guess would be Israel and Israel. Now I can tell you, just as an anecdote from what my parents have seen serving in that exact area, in that exact mission, that the Israelis fire at the UN. Okay. Now, again, my parents were not soldiers. They were in the civilian support staff. Okay. So again, you look at the UN's own graphics. These are how UN peacekeeping and observer missions are usually divided up. You have a military part component and a civilian component, right? Doesn't matter, right? If you're in the base, you're in the base. So regardless, going back to my point, that just as an anecdote, I can tell you that. And it's not even just in UNIFIL in Lebanon. They do it also in Andof, which is in the Golan Heights, where Syria is occupied by Israel. Right? But that would just be a personal anecdote. Thank God, I guess, although we'd prefer this not to be the case, but that there's actual evidence of it, right? Because who would believe this? It's so wild. No, the Israelis are actually this wild. And as a matter of fact, I was just doing some light reading, right as we were about to begin the show. Lo and behold, look what I found. I found a publication from Human Rights Watch from 1997. Okay? And this is really good. Are you ready for what I'm about to read to you? Okay, so give me a second over here. Okay, so this is an investigation into Israel's Operation Grapes of Wrath, okay? And they write here that so they divided up 8 attacks in South Lebanon by Israeli forces, and one of the categories of these 4 categories is indiscriminate attacks on the vehicles of UN peacekeepers, which were part of a pattern during Operation Grapes of Wrath of Israel's attempt to impede. Hold on, let me switch this up so you can see the window. Okay, of Israel's attempt to impede UN peacekeepers' delivery of humanitarian assistance to civilians who are unable or unwilling to leave their homes. Another pattern. Another category, all right? So already 2 out of the 4 categories involve attacking the UN. Here's the second one. Artillery attacks near and on UN bases where civilians were openly sheltered, and the use during such attacks of anti-personnel shells designed to explode above the ground and spread shrapnel over a wide area in order to maximize casualties. Lovely, right? Lovely. Here you can see just down here, when they're talking about April 18th, as an example, the IDF fired, the IDF in advance of attacks near positions. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. First, the artillery was fired without the customary warnings issued by the IDF in advance of attacks near positions of UN peacekeepers. They're referring specifically to UNIFIL, right? That's the exact same mission. This is back in 96. Okay? Second, the attack continued even after UNIFIL notified the Israeli military that the base was being shelled. Third, and perhaps most egregiously, Israel's claims that it had no knowledge that hundreds of civilians were being sheltered at the base are simply not credible. I mean, it's like bombing a UN school in Gaza, right? They just claim that they just, they'll make something up. But in this case, it's more egregious because you actually have UN soldiers with UN helmets, with UN flak vests, with weapons. They're there. They've got flags, everything. It's very different from actually just a UN school in Gaza. Forgive me, perhaps I should have formulated that a bit better. It's very different. It's even worse actually, because you can, the decals. That's the word I'm looking for. The markings, the symbols on a UN peacekeeping outposts or observer outposts are so much more plentiful and clear than, you know, just saying a UN school. And it's not like bombing a UN school is any better, right? But nevertheless, just so we can make clear of how intentional Israel is being when it's firing on UN positions. And, you know, they'll do other things. I mean, they don't need to necessarily fire artillery shells or things that kill you. They can fire smoke at you. I mean, you know, they'll just pop smoke. You know, these are countermeasures they put on the tanks. Now, I saw one tweet. You'll forgive me. I forgot to read you this one from UNIFIL from you know, just yesterday. They used chemical weapons, apparently, or what appeared to be chemical weapons against the UN. Yes, you heard that correct. I mean, you know, if you're a force that just shoots at the UN, why stop? Why not graduate to chemical weapons? So this is a tweet from UNIFIL themselves. Okay, I'm pulling it up on the screen, and it's dated October 13th. Despite putting on protective masks, 15 peacekeepers suffered effects including skin irritation and gastrointestinal reactions after the smoke entered the camp. Okay, so this is smoke fired by Israel. The peacekeepers are receiving treatment. So that's not good, right? Because if you're putting on gas masks and or protective masks and you're still experiencing weird skin irritation, that indicates that, you know, this is some really nasty stuff that they're using. And again, just even if it's regular countermeasures, just, you know, flares, smoke on a tank. Why would you pop your smoke on UN troops in the first place? Like, there's no logic behind any of this. There's no excuse behind any of this. And this is nothing new. What I'm reading to you happened on the October 13th. But, you know, again, I can get you stories from my parents that are from 30, 40 years ago. The same crap by the same people in the same mission. They've never changed. They've been doing this over and over and over again. Why? Why are they like this? Why are they like this? Why are they like this? And so I'll play you a video. From Mr. Netanyahu in just a second. But I thought we should continue with some more reading. Because if you think that no one's been killed by now by UNIFIL, well, you'd be wrong. You'd be definitely wrong. Okay? So the last incident that I can remember, this is in 2006. Okay? Israel killed, I think it was four UN peacekeepers. I forgot their nationalities. I think one was Austrian and another was Canadian. It was a mix of people, right? But they killed 4 UNIFIL peacekeepers in this exact same mission in Lebanon, in South Lebanon. Okay? And again, I don't know who has killed the majority of UNIFIL peacekeepers. I genuinely don't. I really don't know. But, you know, based on everything I've told you and what I know, I would assume the majority of them have been killed by Israel. But again, I mean, you know, does it have to be a competition at this point? I think it's not just the killing. It's all of the behavior, right? It's like basically, you know, the everything in between. I mean, it's all of the impunity, right? You don't have to necessarily murder a UN peacekeeper for it to be a violation of international law. This is the thing they have on their website, right? So again, and the irony of this is if you go and look at 2006, I think they called the Israelis like what was it? It wasn't even the UNIFIL base. I think it was the Undersecretary General. So not the Secretary General, but the Undersecretary General, the number 2, personally telling them to stop firing, and they wouldn't listen. Well, anyway, that leads me. That's a perfect transition to Netanyahu's video, who addresses his video to the Secretary General, right, the one right above. And this is what he says. So he's basically issuing a threat. It's a threat.
The charge that Israel deliberately attacked UNIFIL personnel.
I mean, After everything I've read to you, how can that be false?
The charge that Israel deliberately attacked UNIFIL personnel is completely false.
Okay, guys, let me apologize to Netanyahu. The Israelis accidentally shot all the perimeter cameras. They accidentally blew 2 Indonesian and 2 Sri Lankan peacekeepers, onto the ground and injured them. They accidentally shot a 5th one, I think, and had to have surgery. They accidentally just rammed, the T-walls with a bulldozer and then moved their tanks around it. They accidentally fired near Irish peacekeepers. All of this is just a giant misunderstanding, and I have no idea what I'm talking about.
It's exactly the opposite. Israel repeatedly asked UNIFIL to get out of harm's way. It repeatedly asked them to temporarily leave the combat zone, which is right next to Israel's border.
Yeah, just temporarily leave your homes. You can come back. We promise not to steal them. This sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? It almost sounds like he's lying or something. No, Netanyahu wouldn't lie to us. Come on.
Combat zone, which is right next to Israel's border with Lebanon.
How dare these peacekeepers place their peacekeeping mission next to the combat zone? How dare they? Couldn't they go and put it on the moon? I mean, how anti-Semitic of them. I mean, it's not like it has Lebanon in the fucking name. That's what the L stands for in UNIFIL. No, God forbid. They should go put it on the moon. What is it doing there? How?
In fact, on the day that Israel began its ground operation next to our border with Lebanon, we asked them specifically, please leave this area so you're not harmed. Israel is not fighting UNIFIL.
Please leave this area so you're not harmed. This guy's he seems really confused. You don't ask the UN to leave so they're not harmed. That's not how it works. You don't fire at them. I don't know if someone explained this to him. I know the last time he was in New York at the UN, he was busy ordering an assassination. So maybe there was no time. I know in the heat of the moment these things can get lost, but you can't tell the UN to just leave. It's not, and I don't know why he's addressing half of this to Guterres or either, because the Security Council is the one that mandates 1701. Not the Secretary General, but okay. I'll let him finish.
Yeah, so you're not harmed. Israel is not fighting UNIFIL. It's not fighting the people of Lebanon. It is fighting Iran's proxy Hezbollah, which uses Lebanese territory to attack Israel. Hezbollah attacked Israel last year without any provocation on October 8th, a day after the Hamas massacre. And it's continued to attack us ever since by launching over 10,000 rockets and missiles at Israel. Hezbollah uses UNIFIL facilities and positions as cover while it attacks Israeli cities and communities. These attacks have claimed the lives of many Israelis, including yesterday. Israel has every right to defend itself against Hezbollah and will continue to do.
Hold on, I'm trying. Please forgive me, and I promise I'm not. I can't keep up with the lies. There's so many lies per word. It's not even per sentence, per word. It's really difficult. Wait, he said, hold on. In the beginning of the video, I'm just going back a minute. It's not that far. He says that Israel is not fighting UNIFIL. Okay, Israel is not fighting UNIFIL. But now it kind of sounds like you are. I'm having a difficult time placing him.
And communities. These attacks have claimed the lives of many Israelis, including yesterday. Israel has every right to defend itself against Hezbollah and will continue to do so. We regret any harm done to UNIFIL personnel, and the IDF is doing its utmost to.
Well, why would you regret harm? You just said that they're sheltering your enemies. So I mean, I'm very confused. I don't know what to respond.
To prevent such incidents. But the best way to ensure the safety of UNIFIL personnel is for UNIFIL to heed Israel's request and to temporarily get out of harm's way.
Yeah, okay. So basically, it's another evacuation order. All right, it's another evacuation order, which is also known in the civilized world as a terrorist threat. But okay, you know, I think we should go back. We should go back to when he says that you know, Israel is not at war with UNIFIL and Israel is not at war with Lebanon, with the people of Lebanon. Because when I began telling you about all these attacks, and we ended up at the Human Rights Watch report, there's a reason I was reading to you from that report. Okay, here, this date. Okay, this date, April 18th, 1996. It's not just a random date. Okay, it's not just a random date. There's a very big massacre that took place in Qana. Okay. So by my count, if I recall correctly, they killed 100 and it was at least 100 civilians. I think the correct figure would be 106 civilians. And if you count the peacekeepers, I mean, they I'm just looking it up. 1 second. Yeah. So 106 killed. Jesus Christ. 106 Lebanese civilians killed. And the injured is almost a similar figure. It's 116 civilians and 4 UN peacekeepers injured from Fiji. So once again, you know, we have again, this video is mostly about the UNIFIL as the mission. Okay, so when I say forget the civilians, I don't mean like actually forget them, but I'm just saying put them aside a second, and just look at how, with or without civilians, with or without warning, with or without live ammunition, there's this like repeated you know, pattern of just hitting the UN. They always have an excuse for it. And that's that's the bloodiest one. That's the bloodiest one. You have, I think, 800 people that were sheltering inside of that base at that time. 800. So they out of that 800, you have 106 killed and 116 wounded, including 4 peacekeepers. Right. So that it's fascinating. No matter how far back you go, you can go back 10 years, you can go back 20 years, you can go back 30 years, 40 years, and you'll kind of find the same behavior by the Israelis. They don't seem to, you know, they don't seem to care, really, do they? They don't seem to care. So you know, I mean, when Netanyahu is posting this video and he says, UNIFIL, get out of harm's way, I mean, I think that's a threat, right? Although, to be fair, he didn't issue a threat. He kind of just acted, right? He just went right for it. But there's another one that he did in Hebrew, and that one, he really mentioned Guterres' name, you know, but he mentioned him by name. Let's play that one.
אני רוצה מכאן לפנות ישירות למזכ"ל האו"ם.
I'd like to appeal directly to the UN Secretary General. It is time for you to remove UNIFIL from Hezbollah's strongholds and from the fighting areas.
Well, once again, man, that's not how it works. The UN Secretary General doesn't like pick up a phone and says, "Yo, Habibi, I need you to like move your people away from the zone." No, the Security Council. Again, I know Netanyahu's a busy man, lots of people to kill. The Security Council, that means the US included, get together every year. They have to do this every year. Can you just somebody do the math for me? I'm not going to count how many years have passed since 78. I'm live right now. There's 3,000 people watching. I'm not going to do mental maths live, but what is it? 40? Yeah, almost 50 years. Okay, so every single time they have to go on and you know, do this. The entire UN Security Council, the 15 members, have to get round the table and vote for this. How many times have they done that? Do you know with some of these peacekeeping missions, they'd have to go and do them. They would have to go and do them twice a year. I think with UNDOF they do it twice a year. Let me double check that one. Yeah. So in any case, my point is just that every year this is a yearly event, and they only just expanded. Yeah, they did that last year, I think, with look, I'm trying to pull up the resolution 1701, and it keeps switching to some crap I'm not clicking on. I'm sorry. Look at this. When did they expand that? 2006, right after the war. Okay, that's the last time they expanded it. Okay, every single member voted for that. Every single member. That includes the UK, that includes the US, and it includes the other permanent members, France, Russia, and China. Everybody voted for that. Can you see on the screen? My point here is just that the US was in favor, okay, of expanding the mission's mandate back in 2006. Why is the US now we have to come to a very tough question, right? Because we know what the Israelis are doing, but once again, I've sought with this stream perhaps to kind of, you know, make your understanding of things a little different, because it's very easy to look at the Israelis and say, oh well, of course the Israelis will behave that way, so and so and so. And the Americans, as far as I can tell, the Americans don't have a habit of shooting at the UN. They really don't. I'm not saying that sarcastically. They really don't. Okay? The Israelis do, though. And only the Israelis. I can't really think of that many on the spot right now. But you have to ask yourself, why does the United States bother hosting the United Nations headquarters in New York? Why does the United States bother with the pretense of doing all this crap just to allow the Israelis to go ahead and shoot at UNIFIL? I can't quite put my finger on it. The best that I can come up with, okay, and this is, I'll tell you the same thing I've always said, is that the Israelis crave legitimacy. The Israeli Zionist project craves legitimacy. The Israelis don't join the UN because they like the UN or they care about the UN. Remember, our our great friend, the outgoing Israeli ambassador from New York. What did he say he wants to do with the UN building? He said he wants to erase it, right? Gilad Erdan. There he is, right? That's what he said he wants to do. That's just a few months ago. When was that? It was 2 months ago. It's 2 months ago. Okay? Remember, he said he wants to erase the UN building. It should be closed and wiped off the face of the planet. That's what he said. Okay? You know, Mr. Brick, Mr. Yellow Star, Mr. UN Charter Shredder, the works, Mr. Women in Iran. Okay? That's what he said 2 months ago. The UN building should be closed and wiped off the face of the earth. So, why do the Israelis bother with the pretense? Why? That's it. It's because they crave legitimacy. If you get rid of UN Resolution 181, and that's a General Assembly resolution, not a Security Council resolution. It's not legally binding, but it's the partition of Palestine. If you get rid of that, the Israelis have no real footing. You know, they got nothing to stand on. They can't even point to that. And again, it's not even legally binding. They can't even point to that and say, look, you know, someone, God passed the resolution. So they have to play along. And if you go and you read what Ben Gurion wrote in 1937 to his son, he said any state, no matter how tiny, is good because it will serve as a stepping stone to taking more land. Those are his words, okay? Those are his words. So, go and read the letter to his son, 1937. So you understand why they come to the UN and why they play along. It's just so they have some kind of legitimacy. And of course, given the fact that the Americans are giving them weapons anyway, and the Americans host the UN headquarters, and the Americans also have a permanent seat on the Security Council, that covers them from having to actually, you know, respect and abide by any of the resolutions. Any. Because so far, I've only been talking to you about Palestine, and I've only been talking to you about Lebanon. If we, you know, we look at 242, 497, these apply to Syria as well. They're still, you know, they concern Syria rather, and they apply to Israel, meaning get out of the occupied territories, return the stolen land, the Jerusalem law, the Golan Heights law are null and void, blah, blah, blah. You know, all of these things, the Israelis just they won't abide by them. So that every second that goes by, they are actively breaking the law. They're actively breaking international law because those are legally binding. Anyway, I think my point is well taken. The Israelis are completely unhinged. I mean, they've graduated, if I'm not mistaken, they've graduated this week to using chemical weapons on UN peacekeepers, which is really kind of like, you know, it's like, for the war criminal that's committed every crime, what crime is there left to commit, right? Seriously, it's a long list. It's really a long list. I don't even have time to go through all of it. It's too long. I don't need to. I don't need to. This is who the Israelis are. They fire at UN. They fire at UN staff. They blow up UN schools. You know, nothing they won't do. That's who they are. That's their legacy. All right. That's their legacy.